Well, reports President Biden is getting closer on a compromise on infrastructure. It would be worth probably north of $1 trillion. He's insisting on new money, but probably we might see that 175 billion for EVs in there. And I could tell you that's mouthwatering news for China, which will end up getting a giant chunk of that money. And here's the thing, folks. It's really what globalism is all about. And even after life-saving products, we saw last year they were held back during the pandemic. It still is a powerful force, and they've got powerful forces behind it, telling us it's in our best interest to have to import protective equipment, steel, rare earth, all of these things that China wants to sell to us. But for many, it just doesn't make any sense anymore. Here now to discuss perhaps ending the globalization gravy train, it's my honor to introduce businessman and author of Hillbilly Elegy, J.D. Vance. So, J.D., I read a recent piece from you connecting, the donor class, the American donor class with China, and essentially saying for all the tough talk, even from the right, the elites make too much money from this relationship.
Yeah, that's unfortunately exactly right, Charles. And one of the reasons why we have such a terrible policy and have had such a terrible policy vis-a-vis China is while offshoring American jobs has, of course, been terrible for American workers and terrible for our long-term productivity, in my view, it's been good in the short term for certain investors, not all investors, but certain investors. And so I think unless we confront that fact, we're going to continue to have terrible long-term globalization policies that prioritize Chinese production and the Chinese middle class over the American middle class and American innovation.
Now, part of your piece that really caught my eye, you said the right, and the political right was wrong about China. Explain that.
Well, look, I'm on the political right, and I know a lot of my friends were very well-intentioned, but the basic idea is that what we would trade was good American manufacturing jobs for much cheaper consumer goods, primarily from China, but from other places as well. And we've had two problems. One, we've realized that we've offshored a large segment of our manufacturing, supply chain, and industrial base. That's really harmed middle-class Americans. You've seen a lot of job loss, a lot of social problems that have come from that. The other problem, though, is that it's made us dependent on regimes that don't have our best interests at heart. We saw that, as you mentioned, with COVID, where we couldn't get critical supplies from the Chinese because they were withholding them for their own purposes. Sometimes even the supplies that we could get were contaminated, were made very poorly. You're not a real country unless you can make necessary goods for yourself. And so a lot of political conservatives thought that we would be able to really depend on other countries to make those critical goods. Turns out a lot of them were wrong.
I want to ask you about something I saw in Brookings. There was a piece in December, but you obviously are well known in this area, and they had a piece out called the Rural-Urban Divide, and they say that it furthers myths about race and poverty and conceals effective policy solutions. I think there's some merit to that, right? I think there's I think this idea of dividing us, rural and urban. I just think that there are a lot of people, whether you live in big cities or in rural America, that are suffering the same consequences from elitists. And it feels like in order to avoid really doing anything about it, they take a us versus them approach. I mean, what's the ideal approach that perhaps government should be doing, or even business, to really make sure all Americans get a better chance at this?
Well, I think that's exactly it. Governments and businesses need to look at our kids and at our people, as Americans, whether they're black, white, or in between. We need to look at people who are struggling, who need better opportunities, and say, we want to lift you up. We want to give you better opportunities, not because you're white or because you're black, but because you're an American. And unfortunately, what you're seeing from the Biden administration, and also unfortunately from a lot of businesses, is they're focusing too much on skin color. They're saying, well, we want to help these types of people because they have the right skin color, and maybe we don't want to help those people because they have white privilege or whatever the in vogue term is. And I want to say, we want to help all these people because they're ours and because we care about them. That's the right approach. That's also, Charles, the approach that the civil rights era in the 1960s, black and white leaders took, is to recognize the universal qualities that make us human beings, that bind us together as Americans. Appeal to those things, not to skin color.
JD, I wish we had more time, but like I said, it's an honor to talk to you, and hopefully you'll be back on again soon.